You know, a lot of times when you do etching, you have to use kind of harsh chemical and you need special ventilation. But when you're working with copper, there is a special way to etch using salt water. I'm Patti. I'm a jewelry designer here at Fire Mountain. And we're going to be learning this new technique. It's something that we've been using here lately, and I really thought that you'd enjoy it. It's a very simple apparatus that you can purchase or you can make yourself, which is what I've done here. And it just used water and salt. That's it. So you can do this at home, on your kitchen table, or on your workbench. It's a really fun process, and I feel like you're going to enjoy it. So first, let's look at the pieces that are etched. So I have a couple of examples that we're going to be making today. The first one is this really cute little stamped heart, and you can see that it's got this adorable horse etched out of it. Really cute. And then there's this bookmark. Just a simple piece of copper, and we've got this really cute design. Adorable. Okay, so these are so simple to make, you're not going to believe it. So let's go ahead and look at the apparatus for etching. So the apparatus that we use to etch starts with a container. So you can see here I have this glass container filled with water. It's just plain water right out of my tap. And you can use a glass container, you can use a plastic container, either one of those are just fine. This is something that I just picked up at the local thrift store. I got a tall container. This is actually, I think, a vase, because I wanted to make this bookmark, which is fairly long, and I wanted to be able to submerge the whole thing. But if you're using smaller pieces, you can, of course, use a shallower container. Okay, so once we have our container, we'll go ahead and add salt. This is kosher salt. Specifically, it's important to use kosher salt. It has special properties that work as an electrolyte solution to make your etching happen. I put a ratio of somewhere around 1 part salt to 6 parts of water. So it's a lot of salt. You want to make your water very salty. I'm going to pour a lot in there, maybe a little bit more. And you'll know that you have enough salt when you have stirred it so long that the water is completely saturated with salt. So when you're finished stirring, the water will be very cloudy looking. And you should ideally have a bit of salt left at the bottom that won't dissolve. That means that the water is super saturated with the salt and it can't absorb anymore. That's where you want to be. So we'll just go ahead and stir this for another minute or so, and I'll be right back. Okay, so we've got our solution. I'm going to set that aside and show you the rest of the apparatus. So the other thing that we're going to be using is a lantern battery. This is just a standard 6-volt battery that you get at the hardware store. It's got a negative and a positive terminal at the top. And then we have 2 leads. These leads are just alligator clips at the end of a wire. You can purchase these online. So the last couple of pieces of the apparatus are some pieces of copper. The copper is what kind of attracts the particles of copper away from our piece to the scrap copper here. This is just a piece of scrap copper. It's something that I was practicing with, and I decided this was a perfect piece to use. So I'll take my salt solution and I'll just hang the majority of that copper inside the solution. I just hook it around the edge right like that. Okay, then if I were to be etching one piece, I would make a hook just like this. And the hook, you want it to submerge in the salt water. Okay, so the bottom of the hook needs to be submerged, so your piece will be completely submerged. And you would take your piece and just put the wire right through the hole like that. And I just kind of clamp it up, and then you want your piece to be completely submerged in the water, okay? I'm gonna go ahead and take that out for now. Now, I actually have two pieces we're going to be making today. We're making the bookmark and the little heart. So instead of a single hook like this, I'm going to make a double hook. And you can put as many pieces in the etching solution as you want. That will work, no problem. So I am going to make a little hook with my wire, just like I would if I were doing a single one. Just make sure that the bottom of that hook submerges and make it a little deeper. Great. Okay, and then I'm going to just kind of work it around my container. So I have two hooks. So I'm coming up and around my container, back down in the water, and making a second hook just like that. Very simple. You can just kind of pinch it around until it stays where you want it to stay. That's gonna work. You just don't really want the pieces touching. If they do touch a little bit, it's really not gonna hurt anything, but you don't want them touching your scrap copper. That's the big important thing. Okay, so this is the whole apparatus to create your etched piece. You do need to use bare copper for your scrap copper and your wire. If they're coated at all, there's a coating on there, it won't work. You'll know that you have bare copper wire when you put your pieces in there and your scrap copper starts bubbling right away, which you'll see as soon as we do it. But make sure your copper is bare. Okay, so I'm just gonna set those aside for right now. We can just leave that in the apparatus. Okay, so let's look at how to prepare our piece to be etched. So here's our little bookmark again. Here's the little heart. So these are the raw materials that I'm using to create that. I've got some fairly thin copper sheet that I've stamped into a heart shape and added a little hole to right there. And I'm just going to set that aside. And then we've got the bookmark. This is just a standard piece of copper sheet that we sell here at Fire Mountain. All I did was cut this in half. You can see that it comes with a protective coating on either side. And I'm going to leave that coating on for right now. We're actually going to use that coating in the etching process, and I'll show you that in a moment. But the first thing I'm going to do is just cut this in half. I've got some metal snips. And you can get a ruler and mark it directly in half so you have a nice straight line. I'm pretty good at eyeballing, so I'm just going to do this. And later on, after you've etched it, you can go back with a file and file off the corners and make sure that you have nothing blunt. You can even round the corners and make them match the top. Okay, so here I've got my piece that I'm going to etch to make my bookmark. It just needs a hole in it, so I'm going to grab my hole punch. Also something we sell here at Fire Mountain. These are wonderful tools. And since we have this protective coating on the back and the front, I don't need to tape it off. Normally, when I'm using a hole punch on sheet, I'll tape off the metal to protect it from being marred. And you can use a ruler to mark where you want your hole to be if you'd like. Again, I'm pretty good at eyeballing, so I'm just going to go ahead and punch my hole. That's simple. All right. So now we have two protected sides on the piece. I'm actually going to peel off one side because we need to etch that side. I'm going to leave the opposite side with the coating on here. The coating is actually going to act as what we call a resist. And resist is any product that you put on the metal that's going to protect the metal from the etching process. It will keep all of the molecules of copper in place. So anywhere you have resist on the piece, the copper is not going to be etched. So we're going to leave the back side so it doesn't get etched. One of the reasons that I do that really is to keep the thickness of the copper, because if you have copper coming off both sides of your piece, it will thin the copper out pretty significantly. So I want to keep that in place. So now we have the sides of the copper and the top all open to be etched. The first thing I'm going to do is clean this copper and make sure that it is ready to accept etching. Even though we just took that protective coating off there could be some residue of some sort, and you need to clean it to ensure that the etching works properly. So I'm going to clean it by using a little bit of copper cleaner. You can use any brand. This is just the one that I use here a lot at Fire Mountain. And I'm just going to put a couple of drops of the copper cleaner along the copper. And I think I'm going to bring my heart over too, and we'll clean it at the same time. It's easier to do. There we go. So we'll put that over here right next to it. And this won't hurt your hands at all. You can put it right on your hands. And I actually like to use the abrasive surface of my finger, because there are little ridges in your finger, to help clean the copper. So all I'm doing is cleaning that up. And take a minute. You'll see that it gets a little black around the piece. That's actually a little bit of tarnish that was on the copper that you couldn't see coming off. So there was some coating on there. And let's work over here on this one. And I'm just going to work on cleaning this for another minute or two. So I will be right back when I am finished with that. Okay, so now I feel like both of my pieces, the top side that I'm going to etch, is sufficiently clean with the copper cleaner. I'm going to just kind of wipe off the extra. And I really don't want to touch it too much with my bare hands because you do have oil in your skin. And you don't want any oil on that. All right. And then I'm going to go ahead and just kind of grab the corner of the piece, my fingernails here. And I've got some water here. I'm just going to brush off that cleaner all the way. Make sure I'm getting it off the edges. It just basically acts like a soap. Great. Let me get a fresh paper towel to put that on. And then I'll do the same thing with my little heart. Just kind of grabbing that with my fingernails. You can use, if you don't have fingernails, you can use a pair of tweezers. I'm going to just dry them off. So there my pieces are ready to accept some resist. So resist, again, is any product that you put on there that's going to protect the metal from the particles being taken away. So it's actually where your design is going to remain. You can see here the horse. I actually used this little horse stamp with some special ink. The ink that you can use for a resist for metal that works really well is called StazOn ink. It's a specific brand. I do use this one specifically. It's got some special properties that really stay on the metal during the etching process. You can try anything that you like. You can draw on your metal with a permanent marker like this. It doesn't work quite as well as the StazOn or some other types of resist, but it will work somewhat. So you can experiment with that. I actually use the permanent marker along the edges and in the little holes to keep that metal in place more. So let me set that aside there. So let's go ahead and prepare these with some resist. The first one, let's go ahead and do the heart. We'll do the horse. There's a little protective inner cover on the ink. You don't want to get rid of that. Keep that around. It keeps your ink from drying out. And I'm going to go ahead and ink up my horse. And I'm going to do it really gently and straight up and down because you don't want ink on kind of the outside of the stamp. You really only want the horse to get inked. But you want it really well inked. You want it to be pretty wet. Okay, I feel like that's pretty good. So I'm going to take my horse stamp and I'm going to center it as best I can on my heart here. You might want to take just a minute Look at all the different angles and make sure it's right where you want it to be. Just go straight down and hold the stamp against the metal. And just rock it just a little bit around, but not very much. You really just want to hold it straight up and down and just kind of gently rock it around. Then the big thing about this is removing the stamp without smearing it. So you want to kind of hold your piece. I use my fingernails, or you could use a tool or a tweezers or something to hold your piece. And then I'm going to pull my stamp straight up quickly, like that. Okay, so you can see that the ink is kind of heavier in the center and kind of lighter on the outside. That's okay. That's going to give us kind of a more interesting pattern. So I really like that. In fact, it should come out just like this original one. Okay, so I'm going to set this sideways here a little bit so it's kind of more toward me. I'm right-handed, so I kind of like to angle things toward my right hand so it works that way. And I'm going to grab my ink pad. And I'm going to use this stamp. It's just a rubber stamp. It's something we sell here at Fire Mountain. People often use these to texture clay, but it works great for this purpose. So I'm just going to choose one of these patterns. I think I'm going to use this outside pattern. It looks a bit like bamboo. And I'm going to ink that, and I want to ink pretty much all the way up and down it, and then I can choose which part I'm going to set my bookmark on. So now I'm going to take my bookmark, kind of holding it by the edges, and I'll put one edge down and then make sure it's in the right direction, and then I'll put the other edge down. So I want to really press it on to the stamp, and I'll rock it a little bit to make sure that all of the spots get inked on my piece. Okay. I'm going to lift my hands up. Now, the big challenge here is removing this without smearing the ink. So I find flipping it to be the best way to do that. So I'm just going to take a little tool. I can use the edge of my scissor here. And I'm going to get under the edge, and I'm going to very quickly just flip it up and over, just like that. And the back is protected, so it doesn't matter if I get any ink on the back. There we go. I have a really perfect design pattern on there. So I'm going to go ahead and set this aside for a minute and let that ink dry. And then I will take a little alcohol and clean up the stamp while the ink is fresh. You can see how much is on there. Okay, so let's go back to our little horse heart. The horse should be nice and dry now. I want to go ahead and add a resist to the back of the heart. So I'm going to actually use just some packing tape. I've already cut a little piece of the tape. I'm going to grab here, 1 second. So I'm just going to set the tape down. I'm going to grab my little horse heart. I'm just going to put that right on the tape. And then I'll just use a Q-tip to kind of push it down all the way. The edges are what's important, so you want the edges really nice and well contacted with the tape. Okay, there we go. Now I have a resist on the back, so I know that the copper won't be pulled away from the back of the piece. And I'll just cut the little excess off that so I don't have a bunch of tape on it. It actually makes a nice little handle if you leave a little bit corner of the tape to hold the piece down. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is put a resist on the outside and in the hole. So I've got my little permanent marker, and I'm just going to draw along the edge of the tape, making sure that I'm not getting the top of the piece. It's okay if I get the tape, but I just want to get the outside edge of the copper. Just take your time with it. And I'm going to put it right inside the little hole that is punched in the heart, just like that. If I feel like I got any at all on the top side, there's just a little area there, I'll take a Q-tip with a little alcohol and just kind of dab that away. Just making sure not to hit my design. There, that's nicely resisted. This one is all ready to go into the etching electrolyte solution. Let me set that aside. Grab my permanent marker, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to draw right on the paper towel. Hold it down with a tool or your fingernails, whatever works. And I'm just going to get the outside edge with the marker to add resist on the outside edge so we don't lose material from that area in the etching. Okay. And I'm going to get right in that hole to get that area too. And then I'll just double check and make sure there's no ink anywhere I don't want it. I'll use a little alcohol to just clean up the sides here. There was just a little dab of ink there. I feel like that's pretty good. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and put our pieces on the hooks that we created for the apparatus. So I'll start with my little horse heart here and put that on one of the hooks. I think we'll do it over on this one. And this wire will punch right through that tape. That's fine if you hold it correctly. Okay, and you just want to make sure that this wire hook is contacting your heart really well, so I like to kind of close it up on there. The contact between this wire and the copper on your piece here through the hole is actually what allows the etching process to happen. And we'll take the bookmark and do the same thing. Close that up and make a nice connection there. And then let's go ahead and move your saltwater solution here. We'll go ahead and hang these over, and we want both pieces completely submerged, just like that. And we've got this little piece of wire running between them on the outside. Okay. Okay, now that your apparatus is all set up, you're going to go ahead and attach your battery with the leads. So you're going to start with the positive, which is your red, and you're going to attach the positive red wire to the positive terminal on your battery. Then you're going to attach the other end of your positive to the wire attached to your pieces. Then you're going to take your negative and you're going to attach the negative to the negative terminal on your battery and attach the other end of the negative to your scrap copper. And there you can see the magic is already happening. Your scrap copper, everything that's submerged is bubbling really rapidly. Such a cool thing to see. Now it's going to bubble this way for the entirety of the etching process. At minimum, you want to etch for about 45 minutes. I think we're going to etch these pieces for about an hour. So we'll come back and check them in an hour. You can actually pull them out with the resist on them and very gently check them to kind of look and see the depth. You don't want to touch the piece because you could remove the resist. You don't want to do that. But you can pull it out and check it. And if you feel like the edge is deep enough, at that point you can end the process. If not, you can sink them back in and keep going for another bit. I like to go in kind of 15-minute increments. So we are going to be right back in an hour to check and see the progress of our etching. Okay, so our pieces have been etching for an hour now. You can see the visible changes in the water. It's very coppery. You can see some green around the edges. You know how copper patina is green, so we have all of these copper elements in the water. And all of this color is coming from your piece or your pieces. The little tiny particles of copper have been removed and pulled through the water and toward your scrap copper. So we're going to pull it out and check and see if there's enough etch on that. And if not, we can etch it a little bit longer. But I'm just going to go ahead and disconnect this positive, and that'll stop the flow of current. You can see that bubbling has stopped. And you have to be really careful when you're pulling it out if you're not sure if it's etched enough, because the movement of the water can displace the resist on there. So be real gentle. Just kind of look. Oh yeah, really nice etching on there. I feel like it's finished. You just kind of take a visual look and you can see how deep the edge is. I think that that'll be a nice contrast. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these pieces out of the solution. Now, if I didn't feel like there was enough etch, I could just drop that right back in, turn it back on, and check it every 15 minutes. So I'm going to pull those right out, disconnect my negative there, and just put this out of the way. We're finished with the solution. You'll notice that there's a whole bunch of sediment at the bottom of the solution too. It's really interesting looking. And look how my wires are just really thin threads now. It's just hanging on by a thread. So definitely we need to at least change the wires. Now, if it wasn't done etching at this point, I would get a brand new wire, hook it up, and put it back in just real gently. But since I'm feeling like it's finished, I'm just going to pull that apart. None of this is going to hurt me to touch. You can see it's really kind of gross, which is a great indication of a good etch. Pull those off of there, and then I'm just going to discard that wire. Okay, so I'm just going to take some water and I'm going to clean off my pieces with a paintbrush. Just get some of that gunk off of there. And you'll notice that there's a really light color film on there. We're going to sand that off. That's normal. And then the back we have protected, so we don't have to worry about that too much. And then let's clean off our heart a little bit. Some of the etch, the resist will come off right now, and that's fine. The rest of it will sand off. Okay. I'm just going to take a clean paper towel and dry this off. Okay, now I'm going to clean them up and see what our etch really looks like. So I'll go ahead and leave the resist on the back of the pieces until I'm done, and that protects the back and keeps them nice and shiny. So while I'm working with the piece, I'm not scratching up the back. I kind of like that little benefit. So I'm going to pull the bookmark off. Let's start with this little heart. Okay, so I'm going to sand off a little bit of the top so you can see the horse, and then we're going to actually finish up the bookmark. So we're just sanding off all of the coating that has accumulated with the etching process. And you can see how that horse is coming to life there. Isn't that cool? And if I were to continue sanding, we'd end up with this exact design. So let me set that aside, and we're going to continue with the bookmark. Let me just fold the paper over. There we go. Okay, so what we do from here is just take a pretty heavy grit sandpaper. With our little sanding pads, it's the hardest grit that we have. And you're just going to sand in one direction. It's okay to go back and forth, but don't go around in circles or in different directions. Just keep it one direction, back and forth. And you're actually, while you're sanding off this film, you're adding a bit of brushed texture to your piece, which is really nice. I'm going to flip it over and do the other side. You might need to rotate your sanding pad a little bit if it gets too clogged up. And sand over my design. Really looking nice. So I'll just go at different directions. I'm still sanding in the same direction, but you might have to change the angle of your piece. And you don't need to get it perfect. We're going to give this a really nice rustic look. So you don't need to get every bit of film off of it. Really, really beautiful design, if you can see that. Really fun. Now, this piece is really kind of a flat color, and I want to give it more of this patina look so it highlights the design. So I'm going to be using some Patina Gel. We're going to paint that on, and then we're going to sand some of that off, and it's going to give it an antique look that's really going to highlight the design. Okay, this is really easy to use. It's a stabilized liver of sulfur. And I'm just going to drop a couple of drops onto the piece. You don't need very much. That's probably enough. And then I'll use a wet paintbrush, and I'm just going to move it around the top there. And you can see that it almost instantly turns black. And I'm just going to keep painting out the edges until it's all nice and black. It doesn't have to be completely 100% covered, but I like it mostly covered. There we go. Doesn't smell great, but the effect is so worth it. Okay, so now I'm going to take my piece and I'm going to grab my water. We'll just move it in this way. And I'm just going to use my paintbrush to kind of get the excess Patina Gel off of the piece. Just like that. It's okay if some of it comes off. We want that anyway. We're going to sand a bunch of it off. Okay, that's pretty good. Then I'm going to take some clean water here, and I'm just going to dunk it in the clean water. Some more of that will come off. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and dry that off. And here's where the magic happens. This is my favorite part. I'm going to take my sanding pad and I'm just going to start sanding away some of that patina, just like I did before, in one direction. And you'll notice the patina is really kind of sticking in the little grooves and pits made by the etching process. The fun thing about the etching process is it doesn't etch smoothly. It really leaves interesting texture. So you'll see your patina really staying in those spots. And that's what gives your piece character. Okay, I love it. So here we have this really fun bookmark. You can see all the really interesting patina in there, the beautiful bamboo design. So easy to do with nothing but really salt water and a battery. Just love it. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the project today, learning to saltwater etch. Let your creativity flow with this. You know, it's going to work on copper. This is not going to work on metals like sterling silver or gold fill. It's really, this is a copper process. You can saltwater etch stainless steel, but it's a different bit of a process. So this is really specific to copper. And troubleshooting on this, if you get into this and you notice, say, that your water is not bubbling after you've connected your leads, check a few things. The first thing you want to check is your copper, your scrap copper and your wire. Make sure those are bare, there's no coating. If you're not sure, try some different pieces and different brands. Don't use zebra wire, don't use parawire, those are both coated. You need uncoated copper wire, kind of like you buy from the hardware store. And copper sheet is fine, just make sure you clean that up with your copper cleaner before you use it, just like the scrap copper I have here. If that doesn't work, if you're still not getting the look that you want or the bubbling that you want, check your battery. If your battery level gets too low, you need a fresh battery. You can also check that your wire leads are all soldered properly. You want to make sure you have enough salt in the water, about a 1:6 ratio, 1 part salt to 6 part water is right. And you should be able to etch with no problem with those little parameters. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I hope you've enjoyed it. I will catch you on the next project. Make sure and check out our website for more techniques and more start to finish projects. Take care. Bye-bye.